My mother, God rest her soul, and some of the members of our family were much older than me, were at school in Manad, and the teacher had taught them certain little dance and things, and they were competing at the face, or probably just entertaining me would be the right word.
Right.
But my mother always talked about watching Néillidh Boyle and Charlie Boyle play together, and it was lovely. Probably was an open air thing with a little platform or something, but that was the nearest ever I got. Néillidh's brother Charlie went to America then in 1919, September 1919, and he died within 6 months of going out. But there was another brother that lived on there. I knew him quite well and often played with him, Boyle, a good country fiddler too. But poor Charlie died, and it was a big sensation at the time. But I believe they were very nice to listen to them playing together, playing for the local dancers.
Séamus used to sit in our corner and he'd be there, Néillidh be playing, and he would always say, Néillidh, you're a very funny man. He would say to Néillidh. Néillidh would go on with the fiddle and he would start to dance his breakdowns up and down the floor, and Séamus used to enjoy that. Séamus had Allen pipes, of course, and the two together, many people came to listen to them, playing together. Poor Séamus is dead and gone too.
If you notice it has an effect on you, a sad effect, every note seems to have a crying, less more of a crying effect. That note has to be embellished, and it's done with a slight grace note, which can't be seen with the movement of the fingers. It's done with a feeling in the blood. This thing can't be written, and it's very hard to explain on paper. Music in Ireland at the present time, unless there's something done about it, it's finished. By the way that I have been listening to it, and I don't know who's to blame for it. They seem to not have the real blasts of Irish music, the real old art of fiddle playing, which is almost lost now in Ireland at the present time. First of all, I got it from my grandfather, who was one of the greatest that they had in Ireland in his time at Irish music and songs and stories. His name was Pádraig MacSwiney. His picture is in the library in Dublin, and there is a book written on his life, but it's not to be found in this country. It's in the library in Hazeltown, Pennsylvania. He rocked me in the cradle, and from him I got my first experience of Irish music. Many a time he rocked me to sleep with it. And then from my mother, I got a lot of his songs too as I grew older. She used to lilt for me and sing for me, and many times she made me cry. I don't hear any of our singers of the present time can put the same blast and that has the same effect on me as she had in her singing at all. There seems to be something missing. I think when you don't understand what they're saying and the right expression at the right time is not there, it doesn't have the same effect on you. It's a gift that was given to the old people, a gift. And at the present time, this thing is dying away owing to this, what I call jungle music, which is the rage at the present time in this country, called modern music. By listening to so much of it, they can't get away from it. What the old people could do by singing, you can take the same effects out of the fiddle. As the fiddle is a perfect instrument, it comes next to the human voice. A few people who heard me play these airs said that they never heard them had the same effect before on them, that it was almost an imitation of singing. They never heard that style of fiddle playing before. This thing that's embellishments that's used in the playing of Irish airs, you won't get it published in any of our books, as they haven't found out any way so far of explaining how to do it. And there's none of our classical players or teachers knows anything about this. If you notice, it has an effect on you, a sad effect. Every note seems to have a crying, less more of a crying effect. That note has to be embellished, and it's done with a slight grace note, which can't be seen with the movement of the fingers. It's done with the feeling in the blood. This thing can't be written, and it's very hard to explain on paper. And very few teachers, no teacher in fact knows about it, for to teach to a pupil. It's an entirely different thing from scales and exercises and all that sort of thing that you get in the different music books. You won't find it there. It's an art that was given to the old people. This thing, I suppose I might call it the enchanted music of Ireland, the music that's long ago buried. You need to get it from the old people and see what they could do with it, and that'll give you a good idea how much is lost. Now, I myself have a lot of airs that I got from my grandfather and my mother that are published in O'Neill's book, the same airs, in 3 different versions, and every one of them is wrong. They're not half there. Well, O'Neill himself explains that he only collected these airs from whistlers, lilters, fiddlers and pipers. He explains that in the beginning of his book. Now, Tiarna Mhuigh Eo is in O'Neill's book, and anybody can look at it and well, is it the same as that? Anybody can see, who hears it played, that every note corresponds with every word in the song. If you ever heard the song of Tiarna Mhuigh Eo, that's where you'll see for yourself what's right and what's wrong. The same applies to mostly all our Irish music. These people who are in charge of affairs in Ireland, they know very little about such a thing, as they weren't brought up to it. They need to have it from the cradle, have personal experience of it. You're not going to get it in Royal Academies of Music or from teachers from Germany or Italy or anything else. Don't think that you will, for you never will. It's a gift that was given to the Irish people. the fairies used to play for them. Well, I was one night along with the fairies, and I heard two of the greatest fiddlers ever I heard. They were holding a wedding this night. And they were two of the greatest fiddlers. I was introduced to the fairies by a friend who met me. He named the fiddlers and all, and I remember the names well. One of them was Séamus and the other was Crappin a Frick. That was the names. They were two of the greatest fiddlers that were alive in this country in their day. And of course, I was introduced to the fiddlers, and I learned a lot from them. Never before did I hear such fiddle playing on this world as I heard them fiddlers play. They played such wonderful embellishments. They said it was the enchanted music of Ireland that was long ago buried since the days of the bards and the days of the old pipers. But thanks be to God that they gave me, they bestowed a lot of their knowledge, and I have practiced since a lot of their styles, and I have got that secret. They had wonderful command. I remember well when I came, they thought here I was lost in this house. I was out for the whole night, and I never had such a night in my life at a fairy's wedding. And they put me drunk. And I came home here in the morning, and all hands were surprised when I came in. And it was such embellishments of the Irish music I never heard. And that's why I say I hear no fiddler at the present time play as they did at all. That's why I say that a good lot of our Irish music, I'm afraid, unless there's something done about it, is lost. Finished. It's a finished art. It's an art by itself. An art that requires a lifetime study and practice. This old woman used to go down here every evening and cry about her husband who was drowned. The island is called since Ellen Noran the Biggie. We Nora's Island. Many a time I passed it when I was a boy. When I was living down there, I used to be drawn turf with a donkey. And my mother told me the whole story about the song and how this poor woman used to cry evening after evening about her husband. She was left then all alone. The slow air is the real music of Ireland. You have different classes of Irish airs. You have Moore's melodies, you have the Comálias, and then you have the music of the bards, the greatest music of the lot. The music that we hear very little about, and that's practically unknown in Ireland. This music has been neglected because I suppose it was too hard, too difficult to play. I could mention some of these great airs to you, but it would take me too long. Take, for example, the great Tiarna Mhuigh Eo. One of the greatest Irish airs we have, and we hear very little of this air, because I suppose it's too hard to play. But I have noticed from my experience, by playing it for people, the more they hear of this air, the more they want to hear it. And some of them, at the present time, doesn't want to hear anything else, only Tiarna Mhuigh Eo all the time. Tiarna Mhuigh Eo was Lord Mayo. This bard was in his service was teaching music to his family. He was a great bard. He was taken across to England, the bard. He was stolen across, kidnapped, and taken over to England and kept over there for a full year. The Lord Mayo thought he left him, and he was very angry with him for leaving him. The English left him back when they had him over there for a full year after teaching music to the people of England. And them days Ireland must have been very far advanced as far as music is concerned. They left him back on Christmas night. And there was a lot of snow on the ground. They left him standing outside the gates. And he started to play his harp to draw the Lord's attention. He knew the Lord heard him, and he expected him to come out for him and take him in. But he didn't. He was that angry with him, he wouldn't go out. When the great bard seen this, on the spot he composed this song and this air, called Tiarna Mhuigh Eo. It comes to show the great gift he got of music when he could compose such a piece of music on Christmas night, standing in the snow, and such a short time. When the Lord seen what he could do, he went out and he took him in by the hand. And in this song he praised all the family. He praised every one of them, but he called the Lord himself a lion in the song for being so cruel as not to take him in. And the air is called since Tiarna Mhuigh Eo. There's a big difference in Irish airs and the way that they're sung by different singers. I'll play you an air now, the air of a song called the Wild Irishman. And I heard the song many a time sung, but I only heard one singer singing it that had any great effect on me. And I'll never forget his singing of it. It comes to show what can be done with these airs when the singer knows how to handle them. I'll always remember his singing of this air. It's a very nice air, and I played it once or twice on the wireless. And anybody who heard it, they were all very much interested and they wanted to hear it again. And I'm always told to play it. It's called Éire Mo Thír, or the River Roe. This is another very nice little air. Many a time I heard my grandfather singing it. It's called at the present time The Pretty Girl Milking Her Cow, but he called it Callinjas Cúiseach na Mór. All our Irish music has to be embellished. We only get it in the music books very plainly. What I might call a skeleton, or the bones, no beef. You must put the beef on it. And that the beef is the embellishments, and there's different ways of embellishing the Irish music. We have different kinds of grace notes. And it takes years of practice to know how to handle these grace notes. Some of them use them, and it'd be far better let them alone, as they are either too soon or too late for the principal tone. The result is that they spoil. The whole thing must be struck together. I'll play a tune that's well known, such as Miss MacLeod's Reel, plainly first, and then I'll embellish it. Harvest home. There's a lot of bow work in the harvest home, which is very good exercise for the right hand. There is no training for a pupil as good as our Irish reels. There's plenty of bow work and plenty of finger work, and that's what's wanted. In my opinion, they're much better than any of the exercises in the books. I have made a record of the Harvest Home already for the Gramophone Company. So I will now play you the Harvest Home. I composed a good lot of reels myself. There's one I composed, and everyone that has heard it is very much impressed with it. Especially the fiddlers. When they hear it, they all want to get it. I composed this reel round about the years 1942. I composed the moving clouds in this house, up in the room. I was playing the fiddle, and I struck on lovely chords, I thought to myself, which had a great effect on me. And the strains ran through my head, and I managed to, one chord after another, till the whole tune ran through my head, and it didn't take very long to do so. I was very near forgetting about it altogether, but when I saw how much other people were interested in the tune, since I kept it in practice and didn't forget it. There's a lot of other pieces I composed, but I forgot a good lot of them. The Moving Clouds I composed in the room here, one day round about in the summer of 1942. So this is the Moving Clouds, composed by me. The fiddlers who played this tune on the wireless didn't play it right. The name was called out, but they made a very bad job of the tune. They seemed to have spoilt it altogether. If all other music is treated the same, as I heard the piece played that I composed myself, I began to think if Schubert and Beethoven and all the great composers came back and heard their music changed so much, I wonder what would they think. The chording of the moving clouds, one chord seems to lead you into something else. The melody goes on. But it's the chording of the moving clouds which acts as a great embellishment that makes the tune nice. I remember one time I broadcast this tune, and there was a young lady came in after I broadcast, and she asked me what was the name of it. I told her. She said it was lovely, that the chording was lovely. She wanted to know was there a record made, and I told her no. The melody comes into your mind. Very often these melodies comes into your mind when you haven't an instrument at all. Very often these melodies runs through my head, especially when I'm sad. That is the most time they run through my head. And then, perhaps when I have a fiddle at hand, maybe I forget them. But if I have the fiddle about, I put them into shape then on the fiddle, and I strike a few chords and notes, which leads me into the melody again. Sometimes when I forget a tune, I think of some other tune that is like it, and then that leads me on to the right tune. One or two chords does the whole thing. Chording, of course, is only a combination, 2 or 3 sounds, which helps the melody out and has an effect on it. It's the same as a grace note. Of course, it's very hard to chord all our reels because they are too fast. You cannot do it. And it's a very strange thing. I often see myself very sad and feel like crying. And I would like to cry, and I'd have to start to play the fiddle first, some sad Irish air. And once, when I would play a few notes, I would bust out crying. There's a lot of sadness. Mostly all of our Irish music is composed from some sad event. I played the Pigeon on the Gate for a musician once upon a time in Dublin. And so much impressed was he with it that he said I had the whole history of Ireland written in the tune. I suppose it was the embellishments and the sad tones at times. It had a wonderful effect on him. He was a soldier of the Irish Republican Army, and the Pigeon on the Gate seemed to have a great effect on this man. He was a musician himself, a very good one too. That was his judgment of the Pigeon on the Gate. It's played by a lot of players. I heard it on the gramophone by a good many fiddlers, on the wireless, but somehow or another there's something wanting, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, there's something missing anyhow. And this man told me he heard it played many a time on the record, but it wasn't the same. His name was Frank O'Higgins, famous Frank O'Higgins, a great fiddler himself. I played a lot of other tunes for Frank. He was very much impressed with the art of embellishing these tunes. I played another reel for him. It's not published, that I got from my mother. I never came across it in any book. And it's one of the old Irish reels. And there's 3 parts in it. It's called mBúreach Eo. It's a pipe tune, an Irish piper tune. I'll play you mBúreach Eo. I don't know who composed it, as it's very hard to get the real composer of our Irish music. Owing to so much trouble in the countries for so long, I'm afraid the composer's name of a lot of our Irish music is unknown. It has the pipe strain. There's certain tunes that are suitable for the bagpipes. There's a lot of them then that doesn't suit the bagpipes. Yes, this is how it goes on the fiddle. The bagpipes are all right for playing reels and jigs, but not so with the airs. It's impossible for a piper, no matter how good he is, to play an Irish air on the pipes, because the pipes are not a perfect instrument. They are not adapted for air playing. They're only for reels and jigs and marches and music, fast music of that kind. I never yet heard a piper playing an air that had any effect on me. It seems to be a drone, a sad wail, without any expression. Not so with the fiddle. The fiddle can take out everything that's wanted. If the player has the command and the power to do so, the fiddle will respond to his aims. But the pipes won't. That's what's wrong. Well, there's a lot of our Irish airs has that effect on people. I have saw people crying when they hear these airs played. Very sad. Sad airs composed from some sad event, especially if you hear them at times. We'll say, for example, when there's anybody going away to America at a convoy. That's where you hear, get the full benefit and the sad effect of these airs. I'll play you one now that used to be an air that used to be sung by the emigrants leaving home. Farewell to the Green Hills of Ireland. Did you ever hear tell of a song called the Boxty? Boxty is bread made of potatoes. Boxty. And the song is composed about Boxty and the different ways of living they had here in the Rosses. And the air is very nice. And it's a very strange thing, I never heard the air played on the wireless, or I never heard it on the gramophone record, and I never saw it published in any book. And I got this air from my mother, and the song too. And I know a good lot of the words of the song. Tam banner well shogus niela cruher yeri. Ta kerry karka braka kigas kula hangyan am liana. Ta mancha bobbernet kigas ribini lan yarther. Dama shinnigus that a deliki on fatty oshimianas farule shurushkina bichalan. Jemmy Donal falsa, machnagari. Het chance that sangus the brishin shoe Ghrá. En ik shanty agus hikel shamware agus Jimmy Donal falsa agus holishe. Cannot rise farule shurushkina bichalan. Plodger walks the shminatchim er harnu. Kurmuj got torry a wallerch erne luders. Na hoggin je wees so goedjarta god daarin op 30 uur. Svarule shurushkina bichalan. So where when you own the Martoon Kalin Doyle, Hannan whose cat valley will have pint lay on a poker. Tan Boxty and so well agus na Chrá agis a chora, agus Michal mór na liaborelli clara chora, svarule shurushkina bichalan. There's another song about the poaching made here in Donegal. Did you ever hear that song? A song made about poaching, and the air is very, the tune is very nice. I say these tunes would be great for marching tunes. This song, the air to the poaching, it's called Rad the Mhuigh Eo. Now war a bunnigus, now when you blow na, a tamadong sheer when you war. Keg hoogan allenigus, ning garta, na glimmer testing and kick a horde. Did you ever hear of a tune called the Loch tune and how it came to be made? Well, I'll tell you how it was composed. This poor man, his wife died and he was very sorry about her. And she was buried in Annagare. And a few days after she was buried, he went to her grave. He was very sorry about her. And he threw himself down beside the grave and he started to cry. There was two fellows from Loch lying behind the wall and them listening to him, crying. The wife's name was Biddy, and it seems he had two sons. One was called Jimmy and the other was called Johnny. They were away in Scotland. So this is how he cried. Can Jimmy, can Johnny ma. So the two boys that were lying behind the wall, they got up and composed the tune out of the crying, and this is how the tune goes. Here goes on the fiddle. This Queenu is a very sad sort of a thing. You know, by listening to them, you would feel like crying yourself, supposing you weren't sorry at all. And it was a rule in the past in Ireland, when anybody be dead, they used to get these women to get them to cry and pay them. Some of them had very sad crying. Oh, it was awful. It went on like this. You hear very little of it now, as they think it's not modern. And you'd feel very sad, make everybody sad, when you'd hear this crying at the wakes and at the funerals. There was times for crying, especially at midnight, after the rosary, and before the corpse would leave the house, and at the graveside before they would leave the graveyard. That's where I heard the crying many a time, as a boy. Up till about, it was very common up till about 30 years ago. But somehow or another, on account of wars and all that's happening, you see, and all that sort of thing, death at the present time hasn't the same effect on the people. People doesn't be so sad, and you don't find this real sadness since then as it used to take place before that. Did ever hear the blackbird? Famed the world over, the blackbird, the air of the blackbird. But then we have another blackbird, a hornpipe. They have turned it into a hornpipe, and this should not be, as it's spoiled, the great air. But then the slow air of the blackbird, did you ever hear it played with variations, in imitations of the different birds? You get an imitation of the blackbird, the nightingale, and all the different birds.
evening and welcome to this evening's edition of The Long Note, which is devoted to the life and music of one of the greatest of all the Donegal fiddle players, Néillidh Boyle.
I've heard them all. You name them and I've heard them. And I haven't yet heard one man with the same style, distinct style, as Néillidh Boyle.
Sounds from around them, the flowing waters and the whistling winds and the singing of the birds. The oars claimed that was great for him. You could sit and listen.
He was a great showman. He delighted in being on the stage and playing in front of an audience and that sort of thing. And he really lived for music, you know. That was his whole life. He was a really great musician, no doubt about that.
He was known all over as a master of the fiddle.
Néillidh Boyle is rightly regarded as one of the very best of a generation of Donegal fiddle players, which included people like John and Mickey Doherty, Frank Cassidy and Francie Byrne, to name but a few. His musical background would have been quite similar to that of these players. The same sort of repertoire would have been open to all of them, and like the Dohertys and Francie Byrne, Néillidh was influenced by Scottish fiddle players. Néillidh's style, however, was a highly personalised one, and his unique fingering and bowing techniques, coupled with his imaginative sense of variation and rhythm, gave his playing a flavour which no other fiddle player I've heard can match. When one considers that players such as Michael Coleman and James Morrison, who made many more records than Néillidh, spent the greater part of their lives in America and yet left no record of their philosophy on traditional music, we're extremely fortunate that Néillidh Boyle has left on tape his innermost thoughts on the subject.
It's an art by itself, an art that requires a lifetime study and practice. And that's why I say I hear no fiddler at the present time play as they did at all. That's why I say that a good lot of our Irish music, I'm afraid, unless there's something done about it, is lost. Finished. It's a finished art.
From a recording he made for the Gramophone Company in 1937, that was Néillidh Boyle playing Biddy of Sligo. As we progress through this programme, it will become clear that Néillidh was a man of strongly held views, especially with regard to traditional music, and he certainly wasn't afraid to voice them. As we hear from his widow, Annie Boyle, Néillidh claimed to have been granted his gift of music in an unusual way.
He was out walking one night and this man came to him and took him into something in a place that he never seen before. It was the fairies, really, because Néillidh could tell it so real, you frighten the life out of you. He went in, and they were there. They had a wedding on, and he was at the wedding of the fairies. And Néillidh could tell it real good, you know.
Well, I was one night along with the fairies, and I heard two of the greatest fiddlers ever I heard. They were holding a wedding this night. They thought here I was lost in this house. I was out for the whole night, and I never had such a night in my life, at a fairy's wedding. And they put me drunk. And I came home here in the morning and all hands were surprised when I came in. And it was such embellishments of the Irish music I never heard. And of course, I was introduced to the fiddlers and I learned a lot from them. Never before did I hear such fiddle playing on this world as I heard them fiddlers play. They played such wonderful embellishments. They said it was the enchanted music of Ireland that was long ago buried since the days of the bards and the days of the old pipers. But thanks be to God that they gave me they bestowed a lot of their knowledge and I have practiced since a lot of their styles, and I have got that secret.
He spent his night with them, and the mother expected him in any minute. And when he did come in the early hours of the morning, they left him near his own house for they got him. And he came in and she says, "No, they're good." She says, "Néillidh, where were you?" Well, he says, "I was at a fairy's wedding the night."
It's no great surprise to learn that Néillidh showed great musical promise as a boy. Here's an interesting account from Tony Byrne, originally from Muigh near Glencullimkill, who heard this story from Father Peter Maguire, who in the early years of the century was curate in Kincastle in the Rosses.
He had heard from an old man, one of the senior people in the area, that there was a wedding there and some man from Néillidh's part of the country, nearer Dunlow, had got married to a girl in that part of the world, and there was plenty of music and plenty of dancing. And as the night wore on, a little boy who was in the party asked if he could have a loan of one of the fiddles. When the fiddlers had gone to the room, I suppose, for a meal or refreshments, and he began playing the fiddle. And according to this gentleman, he told Father Maguire that from that until the celebrations stopped at daybreak, Néillidh did most of the playing. He was so good, and he was only a boy, he said, of 12, 13 or 14.
It seems that Néillidh was able to read music from an early age.
There was a man here in Dunlow, he had a factory down here in Dunlow. He was McLean, he was a Scotchman. And he used to come here. And I think he gave Néillidh an idea of the reading of the music, because he was a bandmaster and he had the music too.
Néillidh Boyle was born on the 26th of November 1889 in Chaindam, eastern Pennsylvania. His stay in America, however, was to be a short one, as his parents returned to Cronashalloch near Dunlow when Néillidh was just 8 years of age. In his early teens, he worked around the Dunlow area, and he appears to have made 2 trips to Scotland before he married. He was working in Glasgow in 1904, aged 15, and there's no doubt that his time in Scotland was to influence his musical development. But what about Néillidh's parents? What do we know of them?
His parents, they just was working class people. She was doing her housework and the old man was working very hard.
What was the mother's name?
Nancy Boyle. She was Nancy Sweeney first before she was married. Her father was a great storyteller too, and had the history of the locality. Patrick Sweeney. He was Patrick Sweeney from Céideadh. That was her father. And her husband, Paddy, he was from Critch. Paddy Boyle, he was from Critch Island. And the mother came from Céideadh. And then, of course, they were out in America. They met, they got married, and they came back to put in the rest of their days here in Cronashalloch.
Traditional music was very much a shared interest in Néillidh's family.
They were all very musical boys. They used to play here, you see. They would leave the house, the 2 fiddles, and Charles had the bagpipes. And they'd route right down to the old lane and turn and right up, and then playing, the 3, the family.
First of all, I got it from my grandfather. His name was Padraig McSweeney. He rocked me in the cradle, and from him I got my first experience of Irish music. Many a time he rocked me to sleep with it. And then from my mother, I got a lot of his songs too as I grew older. She used to lilt for me and sing for me, and many times she made me cry. I don't hear any of our singers of the present time can put the same blass And that has the same effect on me as she had in her singing at all.
Neillidh's mother obviously exerted considerable musical influence on him, and her fame spread outside the Boyle household, as it was reported in a newspaper of the day that Professor Moigh Eo of the Irish College in Ranafast and Finan McCollum of the Gaelic League recorded some of her singing and lilting on a cylinder. Fortunately, her interest in traditional music was passed on to her children.
I think there were 6 or... I knew there was a Paddy died, very young, a very good-looking boy, they say he was. And then there was Grace, his sister, and he didn't remember much about them himself. But then the 3 boys were here, Con, Charles and Neil. Neil and Charles. Neil was the oldest, Con and Charles. Charles went away to America during the times of the trouble. He was in the, you know yourself, the IRA. And he got no peace at home, so he went out to America. Con was out already, he took him out. And 3 weeks when we went out to America, we was dead and buried. It was hard. So...
You lived fairly close, you were a neighbour?
Oh, just a neighbour up the road, about a mile up the road. Our mother was a great old lady. And the father too. She was a great singer, you know. She could lift any tune at all. She was a great old lady, you know. She had a lovely voice. But poor soul, she died then, and then the old father died. So Neil was on her own. Neil and I were married then, before his father died.
Neillidh married late in life. He was 48 when he married Anna Sweeney in Dunlow on the 25th of September 1937, and they were to have 6 children. Although a great family man, music was Neillidh's favourite pastime. Another Ross's fiddle player, Danny O'Donnell from Binne Buí, told us of the music in the area when Neillidh was growing up.
In Donegal, where I grew up in the Ross's area of Donegal, we were very much influenced by Scottish fiddlers we heard. Lots of people would have had records of the great Scott Skinner. And as well as that, there was another lovely player named William Mackenzie Murdoch, who was a very fine concert player, you see. We had no great abundance of flute players or pipes or anything like that. So that the fiddling we heard around was, I think in general, you would say it was nearly all based on the Scottish style. A fairly plain sort of a style. You'll get the same thing more or less in an anthem, in county anthem right up to today. Fairly plain, straightforward style with a lack of grace notes or any elaborate. Then, on the other hand, Néillidh Boyle was the great exception because Néillidh Boyle had made a few visits to Scotland, and he heard both Scott Skinner and Mackenzie Murdoch, and he didn't like Scott Skinner at all. He says he was only a rasper, he a Strasby player, you see. But he heard Mackenzie Murdoch a few times playing at concerts, at variety shows in Glasgow, and he just raved about Mackenzie Murdoch, and he would admit himself that he based his style entirely on Mackenzie Murdoch, with the result that he studied music insofar as he could on his own. He learned to read music, you see, and he learned to play in positions and all that.
An early winner recording of the great Scottish fiddle player Mackenzie Murdoch.
And he developed a style of his own entirely then, more or less taken from the lilting of his own mother. His mother was a famous lilter, you see, and his father was a very, very musical man too. And they didn't play any instrument, but they had the music in them, and they used to lilt the tunes. And they developed a style that sort of reproduced the lilting entirely. That you could see that in his music always.
Here goes on the fiddle.
As well as influence from the likes of Scottish fiddle players such as Mackenzie Murdoch, Néillidh also seems to have admired the playing of Michael Coleman and was to record one of his tunes, the Liverpool Hornpipe.
He spoke about Coleman. Yeah, Coleman was a terrific man, but that was the only man I ever heard him praise. Coleman.
In the spring of 1925, Néillidh embarked on a new career by providing background music for a travelling film show, which was touring the towns and villages of central Donegal. The show was run by Joe Greig and his partner, Danny Coyle.
We landed in Dunlow, set up, and first thing we had to do then was try and find a musician. We made a few inquiries round about, and everybody we asked seemed to be of a one mind, that there was only one man for the job, and that was Néillidh Boyle, the fiddler.
Néillidh wasn't in when Danny Coyle called at Cronashalloch, but Néillidh's mother accepted the engagement on his behalf, and Néillidh was booked to play at the film show that night for a fee of 5 shillings.
He went in and he got himself situated where he wanted, and started going over the notes, rattle a few tunes, and no boy was at the fiddling. Gosh, doesn't matter what came on the screen, Néillidh had a go at imitating it, and could do it. Now, you've often heard it said, I'm sure, that a person, a fiddler, could almost make fiddle speak. Well, nobody came near to the making that a reality in Néillidh Boyle.
Néillidh's imitations of bird songs were impressive and came in handy for his work with the film show. Néillidh was so successful at the job that he was offered full-time work with the film show, and over the next few months played with them in Dunlow, Burtonport, Glenties and Fintown, and in the smaller villages along the way.
We went on the tour, took Néillidh with us, and we finished up in Fintown. And all that time that he was with us, he still kept improving at these imitations. He had plenty of practice because the film was shown and re-shown in every different places. So he had a great scope for practicing these imitations, and he did a good job at it too.
Néillidh's fine version there of Jenny picking cockles. So far we've heard various facets of Néillidh's career, but just what sort of a man was he? A good friend of his was the local vet in Burtonport, Danny McGreenra, who came to know Néillidh very well.
Small little man, very light on his feet, seemed very active. And when you met him coming along the road, he never had his hand in his pocket. He had the two hands hanging by his sides and the fingers going all the time. And he always told me that was to keep them nimble and active for the music.
And his temperament?
Bit eccentric. You know, he couldn't suffer bad playing. You had to be perfect.
As far as we were concerned, we got along grand. And anyone that had come, he had always welcome for them to his house. Aye. Maybe when he would see things going wrong, he certainly would put them right. Someone maybe that he, and working with them or something, he would just tell them off. Quite right, I would do the same thing.
Music in Ireland at the present time, unless there's something done about it, it's finished. By the way that I have been listening to it, and I don't know who's to blame for it. They seem to not have the real blasts of Irish music, the real old art of fiddle playing, which is almost lost now in Ireland at the present time.
He liked to be the centre of attraction at, especially at a concert. When he was playing at a concert, if they began foot tapping, he would stop stone dead. No more playing. He had to have the whole attention of the audience. No clapping or foot timing, keeping time with the tune. He was supposed to do that himself. He would stop playing.
Could people talk while he was playing?
Oh, not at all. Oh, not at all. Oh, stop. Oh, not at all.
Great playing there from Néillidh, the jig, Haste to the Wedding. Like many musicians, Néillidh preferred to play his music at night, even more so in the small hours of the morning in his kitchen in Chrúnashallaigh.
My God, when the world would be asleep, he'd be up and down through the house playing his music. Wonderful.
I used to go home for the weekend up to our Ghrá and right back in Dunlow. I was staying in Dunlow at the time at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And coming towards Néillidh's house, the door would be opened and the light would be on, and I'd switch off the headlights of my car, let her freewheel down the hill, pull up at Néillidh's door, cross a stream. I couldn't hear the music of the stream, and kneel behind a big rock outside Néillidh's door, and I used to listen to him there for an hour at 2 o'clock in the morning, playing on his own in the kitchen, up and down the floor.
And was this a regular thing with him?
A regular thing with him. He used to practice at all hours of the night. All hours of the night. When the children would be all in bed, he practiced there on his own.
When we go to bed at night, that's when he would get the urge for playing and practicing. He'd get up, we'd go to bed maybe about 11 o'clock. And he'd be all sound asleep, and all of a sudden you'd hear the fiddle coming off the wall, and he'd play there, maybe the one bar of music, a harmony, for hours and hours, one after the other. The next night he'd take up where he left off and still keep playing the same bar. trying to get it right. And some pieces of music he'd play like that for weeks and weeks on end until he had perfected it.
I composed the moving clouds in this house, up in the room. There's a lot of other pieces I composed, but I forgot a good lot of them. So this is the moving clouds, composed by me.
He'd practice the fiddle for hours on end after midnight, and even the tramps going the road would come in and sit down. He wouldn't speak to them and they wouldn't speak to him. They just sat listening to the music, and they would come in and go out as they felt like it, and nobody spoke to each other, just the fiddle played on and on.
Néillidh's daughter there, Anna Philbin. The last piece of music we heard was of course The Moving Clouds, as Néillidh called it, probably his best known composition. Néillidh composed other reels which unfortunately are unknown today, such as The Wild Hills of Donegal, Dole Castle and Atlantic Breakers. However, since Néillidh could write music, perhaps he wrote them down and they may come to light in due course. As well as playing solo, Néillidh also played in a band.
The Dunlow Traves was composed of two fellas that had the post office here in Dunlow. There was Danny and Murray O'Donnell and Néillidh himself, and there was a guard that used to join them with something, but the trio was on their own first, and this guard used to come in then and play with them for a time. Oh, it was a great wee band. Néillidh had the violin, Danny O'Donnell and Murray. And then I had a drummer, of course. He was Ward, he's dead. He was out in America, the poor fella, and he died in America. Of course, Néillidh could travel anywhere, but the two boys were stuck to the stores. They couldn't travel. But it was a real nice band, you know. It was good. And that was jazz band.
Not a recording, unfortunately, of the Dunlow Trio, but an example of the sort of music Néillidh would have been playing with his band. At this time, Néillidh was enjoying widespread fame throughout Ireland, and this was probably a result of his frequent broadcasts on Radio Éire.
Néillidh was invited up to Dublin in 1932. I think it was Frank O'Higgins of Dublin that actually invited him up. And he got a vast amount of publicity that time because Radio Éire was still a sort of an unknown quantity in many parts of the country in those years. And I think it was Séamus Clondillan was the director at that time, and he encouraged very much, he encouraged traditional music. But Néillidh got an awful lot of publicity from that, and he broadcast very, very frequently after that.
Néillidh's fame had spread as far away from Donegal as southwest Clare, as we hear from the late John Kelly.
I heard him playing in 1932, and I ran from home. We were saving hay. It was in the harvest time of the year, and I saw it in the paper, and I ran across. We were saving hay, and I ran across rivers and bogland and everything, and I arrived at this house. And the man of the house, it was late in the evening. The man of the house wasn't a good for him. He thought I was gone cracked when he saw me coming, you see. But I heard him playing. But I went away thinking to myself that I knew nothing about fiddle playing after hearing this man playing.
It wasn't everyone had a radio at that time, because I used to go to the town myself to listen to it. And he would be away. And he used to play some lovely tunes. But I remember there was a man in it one night in the house we were in. He was drinking a cup of tea, and I don't know what this must have been the Blackbird he was playing, I think. And my God, he says, that is sweet. That's the way he said it. My God, he says, that is sweet. I swear to God, the violin was speaking.
The first one I heard, I walked 3 miles to hear him on radio about 1937. I was only about 9 years of age, along with my father and another man, John McGinley, from Minnicross, who was a fine fiddler. I had a radio, we didn't have one, 1937. It would have been a 3-valve Cosser set. And sure, we just sat there for the 10 minutes he played, and I can't remember it for the rest of my life. I remember the Pigeon on the Gate and Jenny picking Cockles, and I remember the other tunes he played, like Binne Buí or the Connachtman Rambles, as it's called.
Very clean playing there, Néillidh's version of the Connachtman's Rambles. Néillidh's friend, Danny McGreenra, was to accompany him to Dublin for one of his latter broadcasts in the Phoenix Hall, a Radio Éireann studio off Exchequer Street.
The hall is huge and he was the only, there's no audience there. And the acoustics in the hall, or the echoes you see, they were affecting the thing. And they put screens round an alley. And this little man would go down, he'd repair the screen around him, and he'd go up there to the stage and he'd phone up the GPO to see how it was coming through, you see. And the man, the GPO, would say, oh, there's something wrong, and he'd go down, you see, and he'd fix the screen again. So Néillidh was getting madder and madder and madder all the time, you see, and this up and down, he was mad to get it going. So apparently everything was coming right through when he could hear Néillidh's toe coming across a mic coming across the air.
The foot tap?
The foot tap on the ground. So the little man came round again, hopping down with a mat and shoved it on under Néillidh's toe, and Néillidh lifted the foot and he sent the mat flying down the hall. Well, the lad, he wanted to get on with the job.
Well, with us in Donegal, we were proud of the fact that the Donegal man was broadcasting. But the impact, of course, was that here was a fiddler who could do his job perfectly, and the general approach he had to playing the fiddle was really something which many of us didn't have. And we were, of course, amazed at his dexterity. I think he says it all in the playing of the Pigeon of the Gate.
In 1945, Néillidh recorded music for the Irish Folklore Commission as a result of a visit to his home from Kevin Danaher and Séamus Ennis. Ennis later recommended Peter Kennedy of the BBC to visit Cronashallag in the 1950s, and Peter was to collect some very valuable material from Néillidh. Indeed, only for Peter Kennedy, our understanding of Néillidh the man and Néillidh the musician would be quite vague. But as we hear now from Peter Kennedy, Néillidh proved to be something of a troublesome customer.
Now with Neil, he wouldn't record at first. He said he didn't want to record from us. But he said he would like to give a lecture to the BBC on jungle music. He thought it was important that the BBC should know about jungle music. The way we persuaded him to record was to give this lecture, which he did first of all on the state of Irish music and how jungle music was invading it.
It's a gift that was given to the old people. And at the present time, this thing is dying away owing to this, what I call jungle music, which is the rage at the present time in this country, called modern music. These people who are in charge of affairs in Ireland, they know very little about such a thing, as they weren't brought up to it. They need to have it from the cradle, have personal experience of it. You're not going to get it in Royal Academies of Music or from teachers from Germany.
But anyway, we did eventually persuade him to give a talk about the state of Irish music, and then proceeded to play some very remarkable music on the fiddle, which is remarkable because, of course, he goes up into the top positions on the fiddle, which is something that one hadn't heard from other traditional players anywhere.
Did you record much material from Néillidh?
Yes, a lot of material. Not only fiddle music, but singing, something about keening and how various instrumental tunes had come out of people hearing song tunes, which was interesting. I think that Tiarna Boyle did a great job in persuading him to talk about the aspects of Irish music and so on.
Did you ever tell of a song called the Boxty? Boxty is bread made of potatoes. Boxty. Tam banner well shogus nyala cruer yeri. Ta kerry carca bracca kegas kula hangyam nam liama. Tam wencha bobbernet kegas ribini lan yarther. Damashinigas that a deliki on faddy oshim nianas farule shurushkina bichalan. Jimmy Donald Falsa, Machnari, het chance dar sangus the British shoe Ghrá, and Nick Shanty agus Hikel Shamware agus Jimmy Donald Falsa agus Holishe, cannot rise farule shurushkina bichalan. Claude Jerry Waxty, Shiminachimir Harnu.
Néillidh singing the Boxty song in the best of Donegal Irish. At this stage, Néillidh was in his 60s, but hadn't really achieved the notoriety he felt he deserved. For example, he hadn't matched the status of a musician like Michael Coleman. So, was he disillusioned at the end of his life?
I believe he was. I think that he thought that was his talent. He should have made more of his life in the musical field. You know, that he felt that he wasn't being appreciated. But he was so good, you see, that he was a bit above the ordinary as a player, and he seemed to know that.
He was contented with his lot, he was certainly, because he would do anything for his family. He was good to his family and thought much of them, you know. I was contented.
I think he thought that he should have got farther than he did, you see. And some of the recordings he left us were not his best. They were not his best.
Why was that?
He maintained that the idea that recording companies were out to make money at his expense and that he was not going to get his fair share out of it.
There was no doubt that like many players and singers that I've visited, not only in Ireland but in other parts of the country, where they have recorded before, not only for a radio company but for commercial record companies, they always feel slightly embittered. I mean, this is a common thing, that they get paid very little for doing these records, but he would like to have done more, and I think he certainly should have done more.
Unfortunately, though, Néillidh wasn't destined to record again. Time was running out for him.
But then, in 1960, the family was bigger then, and they went away, and of course, we went with them over to Glasgow.
Yeah, 1961 it was. I had been home from America for a short time, and I visited some of my relatives over in Glasgow, and Néillidh and his wife and family lived there at that particular time. So I made a couple of visits to Néillidh and his family, and but I went to see Néillidh, and he played a good bit for me and all that sort of thing, you see. And but I could sort of figure that he was again a disillusioned man at the end of it all, you see, that his music didn't get him well as far forward as he would have liked and all that sort of thing. But at the back of it all, he never lost his ability to play and anything like that.
He was there and he enjoyed himself. He was at different theatres playing. He was in the old Metropole before it was burned, Airdrie, Clydebank, all the different places he played. But then he took ill. He got a heart attack in 1961, and he was only 4 days in hospital when he died. So of course we had to take him back to Ireland.
He died in Glasgow?
He died in Glasgow. He was buried in Dunlow. We stayed in Glasgow ourselves then. We left him resting in Dunlow.
Néillidh Boyle died on the 8th of August 1961 in his 72nd year. In his lifetime, he did get the opportunity to make radio broadcasts on 78 RPM records, and while he didn't perhaps achieve the sort of fame he felt he should have, he did leave behind an invaluable legacy of wonderful fiddle music, and for that we must be grateful.
Very good.